Good morning, all of you. I welcome you all to Ansarkari. So today we are going to discuss the important articles for 15th of January. So the first topic is regarding the village defense committees. So these were disbanded in the early 2000s, but they are again being revived by the CRPF. And here the people, basically you can see in this picture that women, they are learning the firing skills at a CRPF camp. So here the main idea behind creating the village defense committees is that specifically when we talk about the situation in Jammu and Kashmir, so whenever there is a militant attack, so here these trained people who are a member of these village defense committees, they can come and they can handle the situation until we can say the security forces come to the situation. So that is the main idea, and people are provided proper training, they are given weapons by the government, and so that is there. Then we see that member of parliament gets disqualified because he is being convicted for a 10-year rigorous imprisonment. So here you can find some constitutional ideas or what are the provisions in the constitution when a member of parliament is convicted. So he ceased to be an MP now, and that is from the date of his conviction. And NDMA says that basically it like in yesterday's newspaper we saw that ISRO has provided us with the findings of the study regarding the Joshimath situation. So NDMA has said ISRO not to make this information public because it can create confusion and it can create more fear amongst the people, and this thing does not need, it needs to be shared with the media because everybody has a different interpretation and it can make the situation more critical. Then we see Neilkurunji sanctuary. So it is not yet a sanctuary, it is still on paper. So here, what is important for us is to know about these Neilkurunji flowers. So as from the name, you can see that Neil means blue. So they, because they are blue in color, so hence the name Neilkurunji. And there are certain facts which you should be knowing. So firstly, they are on the list of protected plants, and they are endemic to only the Shola forest of Western Ghats. So they are found in the Western Ghats, and the sanctuary, it is demarcated in the Idukki district in Kerala. So this flower, it blooms only once in 12 years, and we can say that they have been identified in the Kallipara hills in the Santanpara region of the Western Ghats. So you need to remember the name of the hills, the region where they are found, and in we can say the Nilgiri hills, and they are endemic to Western Ghats. Then Soul of Steel initiative has been launched by the defense minister. So this is going to promote tourism in the border areas. So under this initiative, which is named Soul of Steel, it has been inaugurated in Dehradun. So the expedition, it will test one's high altitude endurance, and it will initially have 12 Indian participants plus six international teams in this. And this is going to be a joint initiative of the Indian Army and Global. So that becomes important, and Supreme Court says that the environment impact assessment, it must be done before sanction of the urban projects. So this is regarding urban planning, and it is important to maintain a balance between sustainable development and environmental protection. So the judges, they refer to the media reports of how haphazard the urban development has ruined the garden city of Bengaluru. So in this backdrop, the Supreme Court says that EIA is a must before sanctioning any urban development projects. Then talking about the views of Amartya Sen, so he's a very noted economist and also a Nobel laureate. So he believes that the implementation of the Citizenship Amendment Act, it could reduce the role of minorities in the country while it would encourage majoritarian forces. So this is his point of view regarding CAA, which is yet to be implemented because the rules have not been formulated. And he also says that a father of nation, that is Mahatma Gandhi, he had worked for a just polity and a good sense of national identity for all the sections of the society. And it is very unfortunate for a country like India, which is meant to be secular and egalitarian nation, that the government is coming up with the CAA. So that is what he has to say. And talking about Agniveers, so this Agnipath scheme, it involves recruiting the soldiers, airmen, and sailors who will serve the forces for a contractual 4-year period. And after that completion, only 25% of them will be enrolled into the regular cadre, and the rest will be released, and they will be duly empowered and upskilled for a second career in civil society. So that is there, and you can see in the picture the Agniveers, they are being trained, and we'll analyze this scheme once we have a nice article regarding this. And talking about G20 meets, so one of the agenda that is going to be discussed in Jodhpur is regarding the cost of living crisis. So here obviously we'll be talking more about inflation, unemployment, and how inflation has eroded the purchasing power of the people given the climate change. And so all these things, how they have, we can say, triggered the cost of living crisis. So that is going to be, we can say, one of the agenda at the G20 meeting. And you can see in the picture Mr. Kim. So he's a macroeconomic and employment policy specialist at ILO in Geneva. So he says that rather than undertaking ad hoc or knee-jerk reactions when we talk about India's response, so India has relied on its public systems of support for people's economic security and access to opportunities that it has been building for decades. So that's how he has summarized India's reaction to any situation when we talk about unemployment or the inflation. So it has not been ad hoc in nature, or we did not reacted using a knee-jerk reaction. However, we relied more on our public system for the support. Then talking about the world news, so China and Bhutan, they agreed to push forward the border talks. So Doklam is one of the areas which is contested by both China and Bhutan, and we also saw Doklam clashes. So we see a new dimension that is emerging, that China has recently appeared to broaden the scope of dispute by also bringing in the areas along the Bhutan's eastern borders in the Sakting Wildlife Sanctuary, so which borders India state of Arunachal Pradesh. So this is, we can say, a new dimension that is being claimed by China. And in science, here this article is talking about reconstructing the past, about the deep water circulations of Indian Ocean. So you should be knowing that the global overturning circulation, basically the equatorward transport of cold, but it is deep waters, and poleward transport of warm, but that is surface water. So that controls the ocean heat distribution and atmospheric carbon dioxide levels, which plays a critical role in the global climate. So this is one thing which you should be knowing. And it is thought that the tectonic plates changes, it might have led to the formation of two separate water bodies, which is the northern component water in the North Atlantic Ocean, and we have the Antarctic bottom water in the Southern Ocean. So that is there. And other details there are like too deep, which I feel is not so important for our examination. And then we see that again, that ancient DNA traces the migration history of the giant tortoises. So before the arrival of the humans, islands in the western Indian Ocean, they were home to giant tortoises that dominated their ecosystems. And the technique that is used to, we can say, for DNA tracing or for knowing the age is radiocarbon dating. So basically that's how we use whatever fossils we get. So this is a technique which we use to know about the age of that fossil. So this you should be knowing that what is a radiocarbon technique. And then rockfishes, they provide insights into their genetic basis of the longevity. So we see that some of these species, some of these fishes, they even survive for more than 100 years. So this is, we have come to know that it is related to their genes. So that is there. And know about the Joshimath situation. So here we'll be looking what does center want in the Bhopal gas case. So we know that in 1989 a settlement was there between the government and the company, and now the government is saying that on the basis of fresh data which is showing and which is pointing towards a higher number of deaths and injuries and losses that was because of the Bhopal gas tragedy. So the government it is now asking for more amount from that company, but the company is saying that since a settlement was done in 1989, so they are not going to provide any further funds to the government. And here what we are going to see is what is a curative petition. So government has filed a curative petition with the Supreme Court. So a curative plea, it is a remedy which it evolved by Supreme Court in 2002 judgment in the Ashok Hurra versus the Rupa Hurra case. So it was in 2002 that the Supreme Court evolved and it came out with this idea of curative petition. So a party can take only two limited grounds in a curative petition. So first one is that whether he or she was not given an opportunity to be heard, and the second can be that the judges were biased. So a curative petition which follows the dismissal of the review petition is the last legal avenue open in the Supreme Court. So after a review petition you have the last opportunity in the form of going ahead with the curative petition, which is, we can say, the last opportunity and before the Supreme Court. So that is there. And coming to this program, that is the NCAP, that is the National Clean Air Program that was launched by government 4 years back. So we'll be looking at what are the achievements, or has it been really successful and effective in bringing down the PM 2.5 and PM 10 levels in the Indian cities or not. So we see that 4 years ago, the center government launched this National Clean Air campaign, and analysts they have found that the progress has been slow and pollution has only incrementally reduced in most of the cities. So, what is this program? So, it committed funds as well as it set some targets for 131 cities of India's, which was, we can say, identified as India's most polluted cities in 2019. So they were called as the non-attainment cities because there the quality of air was below the, we can say, the national standards of the ambient air quality standards for the period between 2011 to 15. And so they were identified. So 131 cities were identified as the non-attainment cities under this National Clean Air Program in 2019. So what were the target levels that were decided? So the country's current annual average prescribed limits for the two main classes of the particulate matter that we know is that for PM 2.5 we have 40 micrograms per cubic meter, and for PM 10 it is 60 micrograms per cubic meter. And initially in this program, it set a target for reducing these two key air pollutants by 20 to 30% up till 2024. And the base year was 2017. But in 2022, the government has revised the targets and it has set a new target of 40% reduction in the particulate matter concentration by 2026. Now we see that Central Pollution Control Board, it is, we can say, the coordinating agency of this program, which looks at the city's PM 10 level only. So it is not looking at the performance of the PM 2.5 level. So that is one thing. And PM 2.5, it is, we can say, more dangerous particles are there, but they are not monitored as robustly in all cities. So mostly because of the lack of equipment that is there, and cities, they were required to quantify the improvements starting from 2020-21, which requires 15% and more reduction in the annual average of PM 10 levels. But and also there was one more condition that a concurrent increase should be there in the good air days to at least 200 days in a year. So these were, we can say, the two things which the states had to do. They had to quantify their performance or their achievements under this program. And how effective has been this program is that according to a study by the Center for Research on Energy and Clean Air, we see that only 38 of the 131 cities they were given annual pollution reduction targets managed to meet the targets for financial year 2021-22. So only 38 cities were successful in meeting their targets for this financial year, and it also estimates that India will need to install more than 300 manual air quality monitoring stations, and right now we just have 180 stations working, so we need 300 more stations, and there's a goal of 1500 monitoring stations by 2024. So talking about how this program it has managed to reduce the pollution in these 131 cities that were identified. So the NCAP Tracker is there. So it is a joint project by two organizations who are active in air pollution policy, which is Climate Trends and Respirer Living Sciences. So they have been monitoring the progress in the cities, how successful and how they are moving ahead in achieving their clean air targets. So the national capital of Delhi, it is ranked the most polluted city in 2022. And Delhi's PM 2.5 levels, they have improved by over, we can say, 7%, but still it remains the most polluted in 2022. And most cities in the top 10 list, they were from the Indo-Gangetic Plain. So that is one finding. And in September 2022, also the Center for Sciences and Environment had reported that based on the PM 2.5 levels, only 14 of the 43 NCAP cities they registered a 10% or more reduction in their PM 2.5 levels between 2019 and 2021. So here we are seeing out of 43 cities, because we have only adequate data from 43 cities out of 131. So even out of 43, we have just 14 cities who have seen a reduction of 10% in their PM 2.5 levels. And there were 16 NCAP cities and 15 non-NCAP cities, basically the cities that were not identified under this program. So comparing to the 16 cities that were identified and the 15 that were not identified, they have registered a significant increase in their annual PM 2.5 levels. So we can say that this is suggesting that the NCAP and the non-NCAP cities, they are more or less, they are polluted at almost, we can say, the same level. And the NCAP regime, it has been we can say less effective or not that much effective as expected, because the pollution that is there in the non-NCAP cities is also almost the same that is there in the NCAP identified non-attainment cities. So that is, we can say that NCAP has not been a successful program, and however what we wished for or what we desired is yet to be achieved. Then talking about the issue in Tamil Nadu regarding the governor and the government there. So here we know how situation developed and what is the tussle going on. So we see that the Tamil Nadu government, it called upon the President of India and handed over the CM's letter to her. So the letter, it sought her intervention to ensure that the governor, he acts as per Article 163 of the Constitution, which says that the governor needs to work as per the aid and advice of the Council of Ministers. So this is one development. And so looking at some past, we can say, similar instances, however not exactly the same. So we know that even at the union level, the president addresses the parliament in the first session of every year. So this issue of deviation from the prepared text, it was immediately raised. And so looking at some past instances, when we talk about the presidents of India, so in 1960, the then president, Rajendra Prasad, even he made certain corrections in the printed copies of the speech, but he did not omitted, we can say, certain portions of it. And also, former President R. Venkatraman, so who held the post between 1987 and 1992. So he mentioned that when he delivered his address to both the houses of the parliament in 1988, he just changed the expression of my government to the government. So this was a minor change which he made. And This sounds like logical, and he also pointed that since the entire address it is a statement of the government's policies and programs, so he left it to the government to present it in the form and the manner it preferred, because it is obviously it is the end responsibility, or everything we can say it is not the president or the governor who is responsible, it is the government, because it is just a statement about, or the address is the speech that is there, it contains the schemes and the policies of the government, so it is ultimately the government that is responsible and not the governor and the president. So these are a few instances from the past, but we did not see any such instance that we saw in Tamil Nadu, that the governor he moved out of the assembly. Then from economies page, since we signed an economic cooperation and trade agreement with Australia, so that is we can say is opening up more opportunities for the Indian pharma industry. So we see that it will be providing the Indian pharmaceuticals more duty-free trade, and that is we can say we are having a new market for our farmers. And when we look at the microfinance institutions, so they are going to play a leading role in India's economic growth. And we know that these microfinance institutions they support the system of the low income households by offering them credit facilities. And between 2017 to 2022 we saw that this microfinance institutions, this entire sector, it underwent several changes in terms of inclusivity and expansion, and it is also coming up with more digital services. And so we need to have an eye upon how the sector is working and what are the challenges, so we need to address those challenges, because it becomes a very important part when we talk about the local governance. So providing the financial services, the access to credit is the responsibility of the microfinance institutions at the local level. Now we'll take up the Financial Express. So in Financial Express, this is the first article that we are going to take, which is regarding superfoods for all. So what are the benefits of consuming superfoods? Firstly, fiber. Fiber intake, it helps in digestion and it prevents diabetes. And among the top most benefits of the presence is the presence of the antioxidants in fiber that we consume, and they also help in preventing cancer and also prevent the risk of cardiac diseases. And talking about the importance of curd and yogurt, so they are rich in probiotics, then they help lower the cholesterol levels. Then phytochemicals, they are the sources of several health benefits and actively work in fighting any cardiovascular disease. Then nuts like almonds and hazelnuts, they are rich in omega-3 that are good for the brain and nerves. Then superfoods, they protect organs from toxins and they regulate the metabolism and they reduce inflammation in our body. So certain some examples of Indian superfoods you can see includes turmeric, it is amla, ashwagandha, makhanas, we have tulsi, jackfruit, banana, ghee, and coconut oil. So you can increase the consumption of superfoods because obviously they have several benefits for our health. And talking about the uric acid, so high levels of uric acid, it can cause joint problems. So the blood contains a substance which is called uric acid, and it is produced through the body's breaking down of substances which is known as purines. So when purines are broken down, it releases uric acid, and a majority of uric acid is dissolved in the blood. So it travels via the kidneys and it is excreted in the urine. So a high uric acid level, it can be caused by the body producing too much uric acid and failing to eliminate it quickly enough, or it can be both the ways. So as we saw that the high uric acid levels, they are mainly a kidney related condition. And talking about its impact on our bodies, so a person with high or low uric acid levels may not always have symptoms, but a high uric acid level can potentially cause chronic bone, joint, and muscle damage, as well as kidney and heart diseases. And here are certain symptoms that are mentioned. And so how to deal with a situation like this? So we can increase our intake of green tea, because green tea has a potent antioxidant which is called the catechin. So this helps in relieving from this condition. Then you can increase the intake of fiber, and that includes, we can consume oats, whole grains, vegetables like broccoli, pumpkin. So all that should be included. We can have vitamin C and cherries. So cherries like strawberry, blueberry, raspberry, they have anti-inflammatory properties. We can obviously, we must and we should consume more amount of water and fluids. So we should consume at least 10 to 12 glasses of water every day, so they flush out the toxins from the body. Then we can increase our intake of fruits and tomatoes, cucumber and carrots, vegetables, and even dark chocolate. So dark chocolate like theobromine, it's an alkaloid that is similar in structure to caffeine, which is mainly found in the cocoa bean. So that's how even consuming dark chocolates can help. And talking about the economy, so recently the National Statistics Office, it has introduced its the first advanced estimates of the national income of the financial year that will be drawing to a close. So that is the financial year 2023. So we look at a certain data that has been released by NSO under its first advanced estimates. So we see that there are some bright spots. So firstly, the how the nominal GDP has been performing at the 15% growth rate. So this is going to be higher than the budget estimates of 11.1%. Secondly, revenues are buoyant and they may bring the government more money. So that is, we can say, a relief, and it is going to help in reducing the fiscal deficit and meeting the target of 6.4%. So these are some of the bright spots, and we see that our growth is consumption driven. So the balance of risk is increasingly tilted towards a darkening global outlook, because obviously that will be impacting our exports growth. And so what seems to be driving the growth is the private consumption. And we are having concerns related to imports, because we are seeing a sharp jump in case of our imports. And also yesterday we saw about the situation with India's trade deficit with China, which has crossed $100 billion. So our imports from China has increased, whereas our exports to it has reduced. And talking about the overall imports, so they have even seen a sharp jump. And higher imports, they would indicate that we are importing for consumption. So this may put pressure on the exchange rate of rupee, and it would lead to depreciation of the exchange rate. It can widen the current account deficit, and it can trigger the capital flight, which can further put pressure on our domestic currency. So production is down, unemployment is up, and the biggest job creating sectors includes agriculture, mining and quarrying, manufacturing, construction and trade, hotels, transport and communications. So if we look at the all India unemployment rate, so it is at 8.3% in January. So you should be knowing that Center for Monitoring Indian Economy publishes the data for unemployment. And obviously talking about the inflation front, so we are not seeing any kind of a major sigh of relief from inflation, because the core inflation still it remains at 6%. And it is further, we can say, it remains sticky. So that is all we can say when we deal with this article. And definitely it is very important for you to understand how the high frequency economic indicators are performing, and what is the global situation, what are the challenges, what are the concerns, what are the bright spots, how there are some sectors which are performing nicely, how few things are reviving. But at the same time, we are still in a, we can say, a situation where it still requires strong vigilance. And that's it for today. Thank you for joining Ansarkari, and do not forget to subscribe to this channel, hit the like button, and share this video as much as possible.